The entire garage echoed with laughter. It was a Monday morning, and the large industrial repair shop buzzed with the usual sound of tools clanking, engines humming, and radio music playing in the background. But today, all of that came to a halt. In the middle of the garage, a group of engineers huddled around a high-end vintage car, a Jaguar XJ. Its deep metallic blue paint gleamed under the overhead lights. But the beauty was deceptive. The engine was dead. Not one of the mechanics could figure out what was wrong. This car had been brought in by a high-profile client. It had to be fixed, fast. Hours had passed. Diagnostic scanners were used. Manuals were opened. Even the most experienced engineer, David, scratched his head in frustration. He had 20 years in the field, and this problem was unlike anything he'd seen. And that's when it happened. The side door opened with a creak. In walked Lisa, in her usual faded overalls and boots. She was in her late 20s, petite, hair tied back in a messy bun. Oil stains covered her gloves and shirt. Lisa was just the cleaner. She wasn't hired to touch cars. She wasn't part of the team. Most of the staff barely noticed her, except when they needed her to clean up grease spills or mop up coffee. David, trying to lighten the mood, turned to her with a smirk. "Hey Lisa, why don't you take a look at the car? Maybe you'll magically fix it." The engineers burst into laughter. It wasn't meant to be cruel, or maybe it was, a little. The idea of a cleaning lady fixing what certified engineers couldn't? Hilarious. Everyone expected Lisa to laugh along, to blush and step back. But she didn't. She stared at the car for a few seconds, then looked straight at David, no emotion, no words. And then, she walked forward. The room slowly fell quiet. Lisa, unfazed by the laughter, calmly walked toward the car. Her steps were deliberate. Her gloves were already on. She didn't even ask for permission. David blinked. "Wait, I was joking." She didn't answer. She picked up a flashlight and leaned under the hood, examining the wires, belts, and valves with precision, like someone who knew what she was doing. The other men stood back, watching in disbelief. "Does she even know what she's looking at?" whispered Mark, the junior tech. "She's gonna break something," muttered another. Lisa still said nothing. She removed the air filter and examined the intake manifold. Then she asked casually, "Did anyone check for vacuum leaks?" No one answered. She found a small crack in one of the hoses, tightened a loose clamp, and started adjusting the idle control valve. Her hands moved with muscle memory, not hesitation. Each step was focused, calculated. Then she reached into the back of the engine compartment, adjusted a connector near the ignition system, and stepped back. "Try it now," she said quietly. David hesitated. Then, almost mockingly, he turned the key. Click. Vroom. The engine roared to life, strong, smooth, steady. Everyone froze. The laughter was gone. The smirks were gone. And in their place, complete shock. Lisa calmly placed the wrench back on the table and wiped her hands. "Looks like the crank sensor was misaligned," she said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. The moment was electric.
David stood there, holding the key, jaw slightly open.
He had tried everything earlier. Everyone had. They'd even considered towing the car back to the dealership. But this woman, who was only supposed to mop floors, had fixed it in minutes. The junior tech, Mark, stepped forward. How did you know that?"
Lisa shrugged.
"You can hear it. When the ignition misfires like that, it's often a timing or sensor issue. The computer doesn't always catch it." Mark looked impressed. "You've done this before?" Before Lisa could answer, the garage supervisor, Mr. Keller, walked in after hearing the engine start. "What's going on?" he asked. "Did you fix it?" David, still stunned, nodded and pointed at Lisa. "She did." Mr. Keller raised an eyebrow. "Lisa?"
"The cleaner."
The room went quiet again. Lisa finally spoke. "I used to work in engine diagnostics. 4 years. Left the industry after my mom got sick. This was the only job I could find nearby that let me take care of her."
Dead silence.
David looked like he'd seen a ghost. He walked over slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lisa."
I'm sorry."
"I shouldn't have made that joke." Lisa looked at him and simply nodded. That was enough. Word spread fast. By the next day, Lisa was the talk of the entire company. Not just for fixing the car, but for the calm, confident way she did it, without seeking praise or recognition. The higher-ups took notice. Lisa was called into a meeting with the garage director. She thought she was in trouble. Instead, they offered her a promotion, and not just a token one. They wanted her to lead a new diagnostics training program for junior mechanics. Her first instinct was to decline. After all, she'd been away from formal roles for years. But then she remembered that feeling, the look on everyone's face when the engine came to life. The silence. The respect. She accepted. And within a week, Lisa was no longer sweeping floors. She was teaching workshops, helping on difficult repairs, and training some of the very same men who had once laughed at her. But she never once gloated. She remained humble, showing up early, working hard, and helping others without bragging. And that made her story even more powerful. Months passed. Lisa became a permanent part of the engineering team. David, who once joked about her, became one of her closest allies, often seeking her input on complicated cases. The junior techs respected her deeply, often quoting her tips in front of new hires. Lisa's story wasn't just about fixing an engine. It was about fixing a mindset.
The garage slowly changed.
People began to look beyond appearances. They stopped underestimating the quiet ones. And most importantly, they learned to listen. One afternoon, during a company event, the garage supervisor stood up to speak. He shared Lisa's story publicly for the first time. And then he said something that stuck with everyone. Real skill doesn't always come with a title. Sometimes, the most talented people are the ones you've overlooked. Lisa was given a standing ovation. She didn't cry. But she smiled, and for the first time, truly felt seen.